1 year later, the galaxy looked nothing like the ordered hierarchy that had existed for 1,000 years. President Han Ji-hai stood at the podium of the newly constructed Alliance Council chamber on Haven Prime, looking out at representatives from over 200 different species. "Today marks the first anniversary of the Battle of the Border," she announced to the assembled delegates. "1 year ago, we proved that cooperation is stronger than domination. Today, we continue building on that foundation." In the audience, elderly Taman sat with other members of the Valerian delegation. His once gray skin now had a healthy glow, thanks to the human genetic therapy that had saved his people. More importantly, his eyes held a light that had been missing since the destruction of Valeria Prime, the light of hope. Beside him, Commander Sora wore the uniform of the Alliance Defense Force, a new military organization that included soldiers from dozens of species. She commanded a mixed fleet of over 500 ships, tasked with protecting trade routes and responding to humanitarian crises across Alliance space. The Galactic Confederation officially dissolved 3 months ago. President Han continued, "Member species have either joined our alliance or formed their own independent governments. For the first time in galactic history, there is no single dominant power controlling space travel and trade." The dissolution hadn't been violent. After the Battle of the Border, Confederation member species had simply stopped following orders from the central government. Some, like the Crystalline Collective, had tried to maintain their own smaller empires. Others, like the Altarians, had immediately petitioned to join the human-led alliance, but most had simply declared independence and begun governing themselves for the first time in centuries. Elder Council leader Shin Kyung-ho, representing the UWA, new multi-species coalition government, rose to address the chamber. "The alliance is not a replacement for the Confederation," he said in his calm voice. "We are something completely different. We are a voluntary association of free peoples, united not by conquest but by common values. Those values were displayed on banners around the chamber: mutual aid, individual freedom, shared prosperity, and democratic cooperation. Simple words that had revolutionized galactic civilization." Young Ambassador Boram, a Valerian who had grown up in human space after the evacuation, stood to represent the new generation. At barely 50 years old, she was considered practically a child by Valerian standards, but her words carried the wisdom of someone who had never known the old prejudices. "I was 5 years old when the humans rescued us," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "I learned to speak human and Valerian at the same time. I played with Altarian children, learned mathematics from Kalari teachers, and studied agriculture from Nyx farmers. To me, this diversity isn't strange or difficult, it's normal." She paused, looking around at the mixed audience. "The generation I represent doesn't see species differences as barriers. We see them as opportunities. A Valerian's logical thinking, combined with a human's creative intuition, produces better solutions than either could achieve alone. And Altarian's trade networks enhanced by Kalari mining expertise creates prosperity for everyone." The applause was thunderous, but Boram wasn't finished. "The old Confederation taught us to compete, to rank ourselves against each other, to fight for scraps of power and territory. The Alliance teaches us to collaborate, to build together, to create abundance rather than fight over scarcity." Dr. Lee Nari, now Director of Alliance Medical Services, presented her annual report to the Council. The genetic therapy that had saved the Valerians had been adapted to help dozens of other species with various medical conditions. But more importantly, the collaborative medical research being conducted in Alliance space was advancing healthcare at an unprecedented rate. "We now have joint medical teams working on previously incurable conditions," she reported. "Valerian precision combined with human adaptability, enhanced by Yelan engineering and Nyx biochemistry, has produced treatments that no single species could have developed alone." The same pattern was repeated across every field. Alliance agricultural, worlds using techniques from dozens of species, produced more food than anyone thought possible. Alliance ships built with combined technologies could travel farther and faster than any vessels in galactic history. Alliance colonies thrived with diverse populations that enriched each other culturally and economically. But the transformation wasn't limited to Alliance space. Reports came in daily from across the galaxy about other species adopting Alliance principles in their own governments and societies. The Zephyrian Empire has split into 7 independent systems, reported intelligence. Director Park Sung-woo. Each has established democratic governments and open diplomatic relations with us. The former Crystalline Collective has reorganized as a trade federation based on mutual benefit, rather than exploitation. Even species that hadn't joined the Alliance were changing. The mere existence of a successful alternative to authoritarian rule was inspiring revolutions and reforms across the galaxy. Admiral Park Hyun-woo, now Supreme Commander of Alliance Defense Forces, addressed the security situation. We maintain defensive fleets at all major colonies and trade routes, but our primary mission has shifted from warfare to humanitarian assistance. The Alliance military was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of conquest and intimidation, they focused on disaster relief, refugee assistance, and peacekeeping. When pirates threatened trade routes, Alliance ships didn't just destroy them. They offered the pirates alternatives, jobs, and chances for redemption. Violence still exists in the galaxy, Admiral Park admitted, but it's increasingly rare. Most conflicts are resolved through negotiation, mediation, or economic cooperation. When people have opportunities to build better lives, they usually choose peace over war. Captain Ryu Yunji, now commanding the Exploration Division, reported on the most exciting development of all. We've made contact with 43 previously unknown species in the past year, she announced. All have been offered membership in the Alliance. 37 have accepted. Each new species brought unique perspectives, technologies, and cultures that enriched the Alliance further. The galaxy was revealing itself to be far more diverse and complex than anyone had imagined under the Confederation's rigid control. But perhaps the most significant change was represented by the children. In Alliance schools, young beings from dozens of species learned together, played together, and grew up together. They spoke multiple languages, celebrated diverse traditions, and saw the vast differences between species as sources of wonder rather than fear. Woo-seok, now 11 years old, served as a student representative to the council. The grown-ups always talk about how hard it is for different species to get along, he said with the simple wisdom of childhood. But it's not hard at all. You just have to be nice to people and help them when they need it. His words drew laughter from the adult delegates, but also thoughtful silence. Children raised in Alliance society seem to intuitively understand cooperation in ways that their elders, scarred by centuries of conflict, sometimes struggled with. President Han concluded the anniversary session with a look toward the future. We've accomplished something extraordinary this year, she said. We've proven that diversity is strength, that cooperation works better than competition, that kindness is more powerful than fear. But our work is just beginning. There are still species suffering under oppression, still conflicts that need resolution, still problems that need solving. The Alliance isn't perfect, and it never will be, but it's something better than what came before. A galaxy where everyone has a place, everyone has a voice, and everyone has hope. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, species mixing and mingling in casual conversation, Taemin reflected on the journey that had brought them all here. Just 2 years ago, he had been a proud Valyrian ambassador who considered humans too primitive for galactic civilization. Now those same humans had not only saved his people, but had helped create a new form of civilization entirely. One based, not on the dominance of the strong over the weak, but on the simple idea that everyone deserved help when they needed it. The galaxy was still vast, still dangerous, still full of unknown challenges. But for the first time in his long life, Taemin looked toward the future with genuine optimism. The stars themselves seemed brighter in Alliance space, as if the very cosmos approved of this grand experiment in cooperation and mutual aid. And, perhaps in their own way, they did. After all, the universe itself was built on cooperation. Gravity holding planets in orbit, fusion bringing light to solar systems, complex interactions creating the conditions for life itself. The Alliance. had simply learned to mirror the cosmos in their civilization. And in doing so, they had discovered something that authoritarians and conquerors never could. That true strength came not from controlling others, but from helping them become the best versions of themselves. The age of galactic cooperation had truly begun. The border between human space and Confederation territory had become a line drawn in starlight and steel. Fleet Admiral Song Kang-min stood on the bridge of the HSV Defiance, watching as the largest armada in galactic history took position just outside human space. 3,000 warships from 12 different Confederation species formed a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across multiple star systems. At their head, High Counselor Vextan commanded from a Zephyrian dreadnought the size of a small moon. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-hoon, "final count shows 3,247 enemy vessels. We have 830 ships ready for combat." The odds were nearly 4-1 against them. But Song wasn't just commanding human ships anymore. Valerian vessels with their advanced shields flew alongside human fighters. Altarian trade ships converted to combat vessels carried Kalari mining explosives. Nyx agricultural transports had been turned into supply ships, while Yilan engineers had retrofitted everything with improved weapons systems. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Confederation flagship," Communications Officer Han Soo-jin announced. "Put-eyed through." High Counselor Vextan appeared on the main screen, his serpentine features twisted with arrogance. Behind him, the bridge of his ship bustled with activity as officers from a dozen species worked at their stations. "Human Admiral," Vextan began, his voice carrying the authority of galactic law, "you are in violation of Confederation Decree 447. You have harbored criminals, stolen resources, and corrupted the natural order of civilization. Surrender the refugee populations immediately, and we may show mercy." Song's response was calm and measured. "High Counselor, these people came to us for help. We will not abandon them. These people are property of the Confederation. They belong to us by right of conquest and law of succession. The Valerians were declared extinct. Their survivors are to be processed according to established protocols. And what protocols are those?" Vextan's smile was cold. "Refugee Protocol 7. Complete cultural assimilation within 3 generations. Their knowledge will be catalogued, their technology absorbed, their identity erased. It is a more merciful fate than they deserve." Ambassador Yu Hee-jin stepped forward on the bridge. She had been Earth's chief diplomat for 15 years, ever since the Confederation's rejection. Her voice carried all the weight of human determination. "High Counselor, we reject your authority over these people. They chose to come to human space. They chose to build new lives with us. That choice is sacred." "Choice?" Vextan laughed. "You speak like the primitive you are. Choice is a luxury for the strong. The weak follow the orders of their betters. Then I guess we'll have to show you how strong the weak can be." On the human ships, mixed crews of humans and refugees worked together with desperate efficiency. In the engine room of the Defiance, Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez worked alongside Valerian physicist Dahi and Kalari mineral specialist Grexton. "Shields at maximum," Dahi reported. "The Valerian upgrades are holding steady." "Weapons systems online," Grexton added. "Kalari explosive charges loaded and ready." "Engine output at 110%, Martinez finished. "We're as ready as we're going to be." On the Valerian command ship New Hope, Commander So-ra stood beside Captain Il-sung, who had chosen to take military command of the Valerian refugee fleet. Around them, displays showed the positions of both fleets in 3-dimensional space. "So-ra," Il-sung said quietly, "are we really going to fight the entire Confederation?" "We're going to fight for our right to exist," she replied. "The humans showed us that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying true to who you are. And who are we now?" Sora looked around the bridge at her mixed crew of Valerians, humans and other refugees. "We're something new. Something that didn't exist before. We're what happens when people choose to help each other instead of competing." The first shots came without warning. Confederation forces opened fire simultaneously across the entire battle line. hoping to overwhelm human defenses with sheer volume. Space filled with energy beams, missile trails, and the brilliant flashes of exploding ships. But the human-led coalition had learned from every species in their alliance. Valerian shields deflected attacks that should have been devastating. Altarian navigators helped ships dodge through impossible spaces. Yelon-built hulls held together under damage that would have destroyed conventional vessels. Confederation. Losses. 47 ships, reported Tactical Officer Park. Our losses. 12 ships. Fleet Admiral Song was surprised. The battle was going better than expected, but he knew it wouldn't last. The Confederation had overwhelming numbers, and they were just testing human defenses. Sir, the enemy is changing. Formation. They're concentrating fire on our left flank. That was where the newest refugees were positioned, species that had joined the Alliance just weeks before. They were brave but inexperienced in large-scale combat. Signal all ships, close ranks, and cover the left flank. We don't abandon our people. As human ships moved to protect their allies, Vextan saw his opportunity. All forces, concentrate, fire on the human flagship, destroy their command ship, and this rebellion dies. 300 Confederation vessels turned their weapons toward the Defiance. The massive dreadnought shuddered under the assault as shield generators overloaded and hull plating began to fail. Sir, shields down to 40%, shouted Engineer Martinez over the sound of alarms. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, added Damage Control Officer Kim Yun-hee. Sir, Communications Officer Han reported, we're receiving offers from refugee ships. They want to shield us with their own vessels. Song was about to refuse. He wouldn't let refugee civilians sacrifice themselves for his ship when he saw something on the tactical display that made him stop. The refugee ships weren't just offering to die for the humans. They were moving into formation, creating a complex defensive pattern that used each species' strengths. Valerian science ships provided shield support. Altarian traders used their speed to distract enemy fire. Kalari miners launched explosive charges that disrupted Confederation formations. Nyx agricultural vessels released clouds of organic compounds that interfered with enemy sensors. They're not just protecting us, Admiral Song realized. They're fighting as one fleet. The tide of battle began to shift. The Confederation's numerical advantage meant less when their enemies fought with perfect coordination. Species that had been scattered across the galaxy for centuries were working together as if they had trained for this moment their entire lives. High Counselor Vextan watched his orderly battle plan fall apart. How are they coordinating so effectively? We have their communications jammed. Sir, his tactical officer reported nervously. It appears they're using multiple communication methods. Valerian quantum links, Altarian trade codes, even basic light signals. They have backup systems for their backup systems. Impossible. No fleet can coordinate that many different technologies. But the human fleet was doing exactly that. Every species contributed their communication methods, their tactical knowledge, their unique technologies. The result was a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The battle raged for hours. Ships died on both sides, brave crews, giving their lives for their beliefs. But slowly, impossibly, the human coalition was winning. Sir, reported Tactical Officer Park, Confederation losses are approaching 1,000 ships. They're starting to withdraw. High Counselor Vextan's face appeared on screen again, but this time his arrogance was replaced by rage. You may have won this battle, humans, but you have doomed yourselves. The full might of the Confederation will crush you. Maybe, Admiral, Song replied. But we won't be alone when it happens. As if summoned by his words, new contacts appeared on long-range sensors. Ships were arriving from across the galaxy. Not Confederation reinforcements, but more refugees. Species that had been watching the battle from afar, waiting to see if the human alliance would survive its first real test. Sir, Communications Officer Han announced with amazement in her voice, we're receiving messages from 37 different species. They're all requesting permission to join the alliance. The Confederation fleet continued its retreat, but their withdrawal was anything but orderly. Ships broke formation as individual captains decided they didn't want to fight this kind of war anymore. Some vessels simply stopped fighting and asked for asylum. Others quietly slipped away to spread word of what they had witnessed. In his command center, High Counselor Vextan stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The most powerful military force in galactic history had been defeated by a collection of refugees and outcasts led by a species everyone had dismissed as primitive. "Sir?" his aide asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Vextan was silent for a long moment. Around him, the bridge crew waited for their leader to tell them what to do next. But for the first time in his long career, the High Counselor had no answer. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The old order was crumbling, and something new was taking its place. Something built not on dominance and hierarchy, but on cooperation and mutual respect. The age of the Confederation was ending. The age of the Alliance had begun. Haven Colony had never seen anything like it. The human world, once home to 3 million colonists, now housed 50,000 Valerian refugees in addition to its original population. Governor Yang Sujin walked through New Settlement District, watching humans and Valerians working side by side to build homes, schools, and community centers. "It's remarkable," she told her aide, Deputy Governor Park Min-soo, as they observed a mixed group of children playing in a newly constructed park. 6 months ago, these species had never even met. Now look at them. In the park, young Woo-suk kicked a ball to his human friend Tommy Chen. Woo-suk was one of the Valerian children who had no memory of the old prejudices. To him, humans weren't aliens or former enemies. They were just neighbors who happened to look different. Woo-seok dinner time called his guardian, an elderly Valerian named Hae-won. She had learned basic English from the human families in their neighborhood, just as they had learned basic Valerian from her. The integration hadn't been perfect. There were cultural misunderstandings, language barriers, and occasional conflicts. Some Valerians struggled with human emotional expressiveness, while some humans found Valerian logic cold and calculating. But somehow, they made it work. Captain, Ryu Yunji commanded one of the new joint exploration ships, vessels designed using both human and Valerian technology. Her crew was split evenly between species, and the results were extraordinary. "Navigation report," she called out on the bridge of the HSV Harmony. "Course plotted for the Kepler system," reported Valerian navigator Il-sung. "Transit time, 14 hours, 37 minutes. Engineering status?" "All systems nominal," replied Human Chief Engineer Maria Santos. "The hybrid drive systems are performing 20% better than predicted." It was a typical exchange on a joint cruise ship. The Valerians provided precise calculations and technical expertise, while the humans contributed intuitive problem-solving and creative solutions. Together, they achieved things neither species could have managed alone. Dr. Lee Nari's medical breakthrough was spreading throughout the refugee population. The treatment that combined human genetic adaptability with Valerian medical precision was saving lives every day, but more importantly, it was changing how both species thought about each other. "The genetic therapy isn't just fixing their DNA," Dr. Lee explained to the Colonial Health Council. "It's creating a new form of life, something that's both Valerian and human at the genetic level. These people will be stronger, more adaptable, and more resistant to environmental dangers." "Are there any side effects?" asked Dr. Robert Kim, the human member of the council. "Some interesting ones. The treated Valerians are showing increased emotional range. They're becoming more like humans in their ability to feel and express complex emotions. Meanwhile, they retain their logical thinking and extended lifespans." "So they're becoming the best of both species?" "In a sense, yes. Though I think both species are benefiting from the exchange." This was true beyond just medicine. Human colonies that hosted Valerian refugees were experiencing unprecedented growth in science and technology. Valerian knowledge of physics, chemistry, and engineering was advancing human civilization by decades. On New Terra, Professor Choi Min-ho worked with Valerian scientist Tai Min on revolutionary new energy systems. Their combined research had produced fusion reactors that were both more efficient than human designs and more stable than Valerian ones. Your people's approach to research is fascinating, Tamian said, as they reviewed their latest test results. We would have spent years calculating the theoretical possibilities before building anything. You just build prototypes and see what happens. And your approach saves us from dangerous mistakes, Choi replied. My first 3 designs would have exploded without your calculations. Perhaps that's why we work so well together. You leap forward while we make sure you land safely. The success of human-Valerian cooperation was not going unnoticed in the wider galaxy. Other species that had been dismissed or marginalized by the Confederation were beginning to take notice. The Altarians, a species of traders who had been restricted to minor routes by Confederation regulations, sent an envoy to Haven Colony. Ambassador Kethvar was amazed by what he found. Your people work together as equals, he observed to Governor Yang. In Confederation space, species are ranked by their technological level and political influence. The strong command, the weak obey. But here, everyone contributes what they can and benefits from what others offer. Yang finished. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. We have been watching your progress with great interest. The Altarian Trade Federation would like to discuss joining your alliance. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The Kalari, skilled miners who had been exploited by Confederation corporations, sent representatives. The Nyx peaceful farmers who had been forced to pay protection fees to Zephyrian warlords inquired about colonial opportunities in human space. Word of these developments reached the Galactic Confederation, and the response was immediate and harsh. High Counselor Vextan issued Emergency Decree 447, forbidding any Confederation member from conducting trade or diplomacy with human territories. The humans are disrupting the natural order of galactic civilization, he declared before the full Confederation Council. They offer false promises of equality to species that should know their place. This chaos must be stopped. But the decree had an unexpected effect. Instead of isolating humanity, it drove more species to seek human protection. The Yilan, master shipbuilders who had grown tired of Confederation restrictions, moved their entire manufacturing base to human space. The Vorthan, brilliant mathematicians who had been denied research grants because their species was considered non-essential, found eager partners among human scientists. Captain Ryu Yunji's exploration missions began encountering refugee ships from dozens of species, all seeking the same thing the Valerians had found: a chance to survive and thrive without the rigid hierarchies of Confederation space. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from a Kalari mining ship, reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. They say they're fleeing Confederation forces and requesting asylum. How many aboard? 15,000, mostly families. Ryu didn't hesitate. Signal them to follow us to the nearest human colony. We'll provide escort. Ma'am, that will put us in violation of Confederation space law. Then we're in violation. Signal the fleet. All ships are to provide assistance to any refugees requesting aid. This policy of open assistance was spreading throughout human space. What had started as a rescue mission for the Valerians was becoming a galactic movement. Species across the galaxy were learning that there was an alternative to Confederation rule, a place where they could be valued for what they contributed rather than judged by where they ranked in some cosmic hierarchy. On Haven Colony, young Wusiak played with children from 6 different species in the integrated schools. He spoke 4 languages fluently and was learning 2 more. When asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, he said simply, "I want to help people like the humans helped us." His teacher, Ms. Jennifer Thompson, smiled at his answer. She had been one of the humans who remembered the Confederation's rejection of Earth during the climate crisis. But watching these children play together, learning from each other, growing up without the prejudices that had divided the galaxy, for so long she felt hope for the future. Governor Yang received regular reports about the growing refugee population in human space. The numbers were staggering. Over 5 million beings from 37 different species now lived under human protection. But rather than being a burden, they were becoming humanity's greatest strength. The Valerian science teams have increased our agricultural output by 40%, she read from the latest economic report. The Altarian trade networks have tripled our commerce revenue. The Kalari mining operations have provided rare minerals we've never had access to before. And the military situation? Asked Deputy Governor Park. Complicated. The Confederation is mobilizing more forces, but so are we. Every refugee ship that arrives brings not just people, but knowledge, skills, and sometimes military assets. The Nix may be peaceful farmers, but they make excellent intelligence analysts. The Yalan build ships better than anyone in the galaxy. The truth was that humanity was becoming more powerful than anyone had expected, including the humans themselves. The species that the Confederation had dismissed as primitive was now leading a coalition that rivaled the great galactic powers. But power brought responsibility, and responsibility brought difficult choices. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about Confederation crackdowns on species suspected of sympathizing with humans. The Zephyrian Empire had occupied 3 Altarian trade stations. The Crystalline Collective was blockading Kalari mining worlds. They're punishing anyone who might consider joining us, Admiral Park reported during a secure communication with Earth. The question is, what do we do about it? President Chen Wei's image flickered on the screen, her expression grave. We do what we've always done, Admiral. We help those who need help, but we also prepare for the possibility that the Confederation won't allow this to continue peacefully. You think they'll? The human medical ships were unlike anything the Valerians had ever seen. Instead of the cold, sterile environments they were used to in Confederation hospitals, these ships felt warm and welcoming. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, and even artwork on the walls made the refugees feel like guests rather than patients. Dahi, a young Valerian barely past her 100th birthday, worked alongside Dr. Li Nari in one of the main medical bays. At first, she had been suspicious of the human doctor. After all, her education had taught her that humans were violent and backward. But watching Dr. Li work changed her mind completely. How do you do it? Dahi asked as they finished treating another patient with the genetic condition that was slowly killing her people. Do what? Dr. Li replied, checking the patient's vital signs on a device that somehow combined human and Valerian technology. Care so much about people you've never met. In Confederation space, medical treatment is efficient but cold. Doctors fix problems and move on. You actually talk to your patients, comfort them, make them feel better even when you can't cure them. Dr. Li smiled sadly. Maybe that's because we know what it's like to suffer without help. 15 years ago, when Earth was dying, we sent desperate messages to every Confederation world. We begged for medical supplies, for technology, for any kind of assistance. Dahi felt her stomach sink. She knew this story, but hearing it from a human made it real in a way the history books never had. The Zephyrian Empire said our crisis was an unfortunate but predictable result of poor planetary management. Dr. Li continued. The Crystalline Collective offered to buy our art and literature before our civilization collapsed. And the Valerians. We said you needed to solve your own problems before you could join civilized society, Dahi whispered. Yes. 2 billion people died during Earth's climate crisis. My parents were among them. But we learned something important from that experience. What? We learned that help should never depend on whether someone deserves it. It should be given because people are suffering, and suffering is wrong. Across the fleet, Professor Choi Minho worked day and night in his laboratory, trying to understand the genetic plague killing the Valerians. The condition was unlike anything he had seen before. The Valerian DNA was literally unraveling, as if some fundamental force was pulling it apart. It's not just radiation damage, he explained to Admiral Park during one of their daily briefings. This is something deeper. Their genetic code is breaking down in a very specific pattern. Can you fix it? Maybe. Human DNA has something Valerian. DNA doesn't. Chaos. Our genetic code is full of random mutations, evolutionary leftovers, redundant systems. Most species see this as a flaw, but it might be exactly what we need. Commander Baek Do-hyun, the human logistics coordinator, was facing his own challenges. Managing supplies for 200,000 refugees was complicated enough, but doing it while traveling through space made everything harder. We need to establish more permanent facilities, he told Sora during a planning meeting. These people can't live on ships forever, especially with their medical condition getting worse. Where do you suggest? Sora asked. The Confederation has already declared our territories forfeit. We have nowhere to go. Actually, you do. The Human Colonial Union has 47 worlds with space for refugees. We've already begun preparing facilities on Haven Colony, New Terra, and Eden Prime. Sora was stunned. You would share your worlds with us? Why not? There's plenty of room, and your people have knowledge and skills that could benefit everyone. Besides, diversity makes communities stronger. It was a concept completely foreign to Confederation thinking, where species were separated by careful treaties and border agreements. The idea that different races could simply live together as neighbors was revolutionary. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Galactic Confederation was mobilizing its response. High Counselor Vextan of the Zephyrian Empire led a joint fleet of 1,200 warships toward the human refugee convoy. The humans have overstepped their boundaries, he declared to the assembled fleet commanders. They were rejected from Confederation membership for good reason. Now they dare to interfere in our internal affairs. What are our orders regarding the Valerians? Asked Admiral Zekthor of the Crystalline Collective. The Valerian species has been declared extinct. Their former territories have been redistributed among member worlds. Any survivors are to be processed according to Refugee Protocol 7. The other commanders knew what that meant. Refugee Protocol 7 was essentially a death sentence disguised as bureaucracy. Survivors would be separated, relocated to different worlds, and gradually absorbed into existing populations until their culture disappeared entirely. Back on the human ships, the Valerians were beginning to learn more about their rescuers. Jinwoo spent his time in the engineering sections, amazed by human problem-solving methods. Your approach to technology is completely different from ours, he told Chief Engineer Lim Soo-jin as they worked on upgrading the Valerian ship's failing systems. How so? Valerian engineering is all about perfection. We design systems to work flawlessly for centuries without maintenance. But when something goes wrong, it usually means complete system failure. And human engineering? You seem to expect things to break. Your ships have repair bays built right into them. Your tools are designed to be used by anyone, not just specialists. You even have spare parts for systems that haven't been invented yet. Soo-jin laughed. That's because we learned the hard way that perfection is the enemy of survival. During Earth's crisis, our perfect systems failed while our crude backup plans worked. Now we design everything to be fixable by ordinary people under terrible conditions. Dr. Lee's medical research was making progress, but slowly. The genetic plague was more complex than she had initially thought. However, she was beginning to see a pattern in how human DNA might provide a solution. The key is redundancy, she explained to Professor Choi. Valerian genetics are elegant and efficient, but they have no backup systems. When something goes wrong, everything fails at once. Human DNA is messy and chaotic, but it has multiple ways to do everything. So we're basically going to teach their genes to be more human? In a sense, yes. We'll introduce human style, redundancy into their genetic code. It won't be perfect, but it should stop the cascade failure. The treatment would require close cooperation between human and Valerian medical teams, something that had never been attempted before. But as the two species worked together, they discovered that their different approaches complemented each other perfectly. Tai Min, the elderly former ambassador, spent his time learning about human history and culture. What he discovered shocked him more than any scientific breakthrough. You've fought over 300 wars in the past 1,000 years, he said to Admiral Park during one of their conversations. That's right, we're not proud of it. But you also have records of over 2,000 instances where you helped former enemies during disasters, species that had been trying to destroy each other suddenly working together to save lives. Also, true. How is that possible? How can a species be so violent and so compassionate at the same time? Admiral Park thought for a moment. Maybe because we understand both sides, We know what it's like to hurt and be hurt. That makes us dangerous, but it also makes us capable of great kindness." This conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the bridge. Long-range sensors had detected a massive fleet approaching from Confederation space. 1,200 warships led by High Counselor Vextan himself. "They're demanding we stop and surrender the Valerian refugees," Communications Officer Han Yujin reported. "What's our response?" Admiral Park asked. Before anyone could answer, Sora stepped onto the human bridge. Behind her came dozens of other Valerians, including Jinwoo, Taemin, and Dahi. "Admiral," Sora said formally, "we want you to know that we stand with humanity. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Park was moved by the gesture, but practical concerns remained. "Commander, we appreciate your support, but this is 1,200 warships against 50. The odds are not in our favor." "Maybe not," Jinwoo said with a smile, "but we've learned something important from you humans. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible when people work together." As the Confederation fleet drew closer, human and Valerian crews prepared for what seemed like certain defeat. But deep in Professor Choi's laboratory, something amazing was happening. The first successful test of the genetic treatment had just been completed. A dying Valerian volunteer was now showing signs of recovery. The human-modified DNA was working, stopping the genetic cascade that had been killing his people. For the first time since their son died, the Valerians had real hope for survival. Now all they had to do was live long enough to share that hope with the rest of their people. The Confederation fleet was just hours away, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. Would they stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds, or would they surrender the people they had traveled across the galaxy to save? The human fleet was unlike anything Sora had ever seen. Their ships were not the sleek, beautiful vessels that Confederation races preferred. Instead, they looked practical and sturdy, built for function rather than form. But there were so many of them. Dozens of massive medical ships, supply vessels, and escort fighters surrounded the Valerian refugee fleet like protective guardians. Admiral Park's face reappeared on the main screen. Behind him, Sora could see humans working at control stations with calm efficiency. "Commander Sora, we're going to begin transfer operations immediately. Your people need medical attention, and several of your ships are showing critical system failures." Sora nodded, though part of her still couldn't believe this was happening. "Admiral, may I ask how you knew we needed help?" "Our distress signals were sent to Confederation worlds, not to Earth." "We monitor all emergency frequencies," Park replied. "When we heard about Valeria Prime's situation, we immediately prepared a rescue mission. It took us 2 months to get here, but we brought everything we could." 2 months. Sora realized the humans had been traveling toward Valerian space since before her world had died. They had left Earth not knowing if they would arrive in time, not knowing if the Valerians would even accept their help. Dr. Lee Nari was the first human to board a Valerian ship. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, leading a team of medical personnel through the crowded transport vessel. The Valerians stared at her in wonder and confusion. Many had never seen a human before. "We need to check everyone for radiation exposure and malnutrition," Dr. Lee explained to Sora through a translator device. "Space travel this long in these conditions, it's hard on the body." As Dr. Lee worked, she noticed something troubling. Many Valerians were showing symptoms of a genetic condition she didn't recognize. Their skin had a grayish tint and they seemed weak despite adequate nutrition. "Commander," Dr. Lee said privately to Sora, "I need to run some tests. I think your people might be suffering from more than just the stress of evacuation." Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Admiral Park was meeting with his senior staff. Corporal Kim Jae-sung, a tough Marine who had lost his family during Earth's climate crisis, spoke up during the briefing. "Admiral, with respect, why are we helping them? 15 years ago, when our world was dying, they turned their backs on us. My parents died in the floods while the Valerians voted against giving us aid." Park understood the man's anger. Many humans remembered the Confederation's rejection. But the Admiral's voice was firm. "Corporal, we're not helping them because they deserve it. We're helping them because it's the right thing to do. That's what makes us different. The rescue operation continued for days. Human ships docked with failing Valerian transports, transferring people to better equipped vessels. Children who had been crying from hunger were given food. Sick Valerians received medical treatment. Elderly refugees found comfortable beds. For the first time in weeks, Jin Wu, the young Valerian engineer, worked alongside human technicians to repair damaged systems. He was amazed by their approach to problem solving. Where Valerians would analyze a problem for hours before acting, humans seemed to instinctively try solutions, learning by doing. Your ship designs are fascinating, he told Chief Engineer Lim Soo-jin as they worked on a failing power core. They're so different from ours. Different how? Soo-jin asked, passing him a tool. Confederation ships are built for perfection. Every system has 3 backups, everything is calculated precisely. But your ships, they seem built to be fixed. Like you expect things to break. Soo-jin laughed. We do expect things to break. That's why we make them easy to repair. Perfect. Systems fail completely when something goes wrong. Our systems fail gradually, giving us time to fix them. It was a philosophy Jin Wu had never considered. The humans planned for failure, while his people had tried to prevent it entirely. Now, with their perfect Valerian ships breaking down one by one, he could see the wisdom in the human approach. Dr. Lee's medical tests confirmed her fears. The Valerians were suffering from something called genetic cascade failure. Their DNA was breaking down, probably due to radiation exposure during their son's death throes. Traditional Confederation medicine had no cure. How long do they have? Admiral Park asked during a private meeting. Without treatment, maybe 2 years. Doctor, Lee replied. The condition will get worse over time. Eventually their organs will shut down. Can we treat it? I don't know. This is beyond anything in our medical databases. But I have an idea. Human genetics are naturally more chaotic than most alien species. That chaos might be the key to finding a solution. While the medical teams worked, the combined fleet traveled toward human space. The Valerians were amazed to learn how far humanity had come in just 15 years. Not only did they have interstellar capability, but they had established colonies on dozens of worlds. How is this possible? Taiman asked Admiral Park during a tour of the human flagship. The elderly Valerian had been rescued from Valeria Prime, at the last moment when a human shuttle had returned to evacuate council members who chose to stay. We had motivation, Park replied simply. After the Confederation rejected us, we realized we could only depend on ourselves. We developed new technologies, built new ships, explored new worlds. We did it because we had to. But the expense and the resources, how did you manage it so quickly? We learned to work together, not just humans, but anyone who wanted to help. We found other species the Confederation had rejected or ignored. We built alliances based on mutual aid rather than political advantage. Tae Min was quiet for a long moment. We were wrong about you, all of us in the Confederation. We saw your emotions, your conflicts, your seeming chaos, and we thought you were primitive. Maybe we are primitive, Park said with a smile, but sometimes primitive solutions work better than sophisticated ones. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Lee. Admiral, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about the Valerian condition. In the medical bay, Dr. Lee showed them her latest findings. The genetic damage is worse than I thought, but I may have found something. Human genetic material has a natural resistance to this type of breakdown. If we can synthesize certain human proteins and adapt them to Valerian biology. You're talking about using human DNA to cure us? Tae Min asked, amazed. It's possible, but it would require extensive cooperation between our medical teams and yours, and there are risks. Sora, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Doctor, after what your people have done for us, we trust you completely. What do you need? As the combined fleet continued toward human space, word spread throughout both crews about the potential cure. Humans and Valerians began working together more closely, sharing knowledge and resources. The barriers between species seemed to dissolve in the face of common purpose. But not everyone was happy about the situation. Deep in space, the Galactic Confederation was receiving reports of human activity in their former territory. The same humans they had rejected 15 years ago were now operating a massive fleet, conducting rescue missions, and offering aid to Confederation citizens. This cannot be allowed to continue, declared High Counselor Vextan of the Zephyrian Empire. If humans start interfering in Confederation affairs, other primitive species might follow their example. What do you suggest? Asked his aide. Send a fleet. Remind the humans of their place in the galaxy. The Valerians belong to the Confederation, not to some upstart human rescue mission. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Park received an encrypted message from Earth Command. The Confederation was mobilizing ships and demanding the return of the Valerian refugees. Humanity's first real test on the galactic stage was approaching. Park looked out at the stars, thinking of the 200,000 Valerians now depending on human protection. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly, preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. Sir, Communications Officer Han Yu-jin called out. Incoming transmission from Earth. Priority 1. Put it through. President Chen Wei's face appeared, on screen. Admiral, I've been monitoring the situation. The Confederation is sending a fleet to intercept you. They're demanding we return the Valerians to their custody. And our response, Madam President? Chen's expression was determined. We didn't cross the galaxy just to hand these people over to the same governments that abandoned them. You have full authority to protect the refugees by any means necessary. Park nodded. Understood, ma'am. As the transmission ended, Park turned to his crew. For the first time in galactic history, humans were about to stand against the combined might of the Confederation. The stakes couldn't be higher. If they failed, not only would the Valerians die, but humanity's future among the stars would be over before it truly began. All ships, Park announced fleet-wide, prepare for possible hostile contact. We're about to find out what we're really made of. The red sun of Valeria Prime grew larger each day, swelling like an angry wound in the sky. Taemin stood on the observation deck of the science tower, watching the star that had given life to his people for millions of years prepare to destroy them all. In just 3 months, their sun would collapse into a black hole, taking the entire system with it. The Zephyrian Empire has sent their final response, Sora said, as she entered the room. Her uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She had been working without sleep for days, trying to coordinate the evacuation. They say they cannot spare any ships, too many resources tied up in border conflicts. Taemin turned from the window. What about the Crystalline Collective? The Nexus Federation? Same answer from everyone. Sora's voice was bitter. Suddenly, all our allies have urgent business elsewhere. 50 million Valerians about to die, and the Great Galactic Confederation cannot find a single ship to help. The irony was not lost on either of them. For 3 centuries, Valeria had been one of the founding members of the Galactic Confederation. They had contributed their advanced technology, their scientific knowledge, their military strength. They had helped write the laws that governed 1,000 worlds. And now, when they needed help the most, those same allies turned their backs. Jinwoo burst through the doors, his young face flushed with excitement and anger. Commander Sora, I've been monitoring all communication channels. Do you know what the Altarian Council said when they rejected our request? I can imagine, Sora said dryly. They said we should have planned better for stellar collapse. Planned better, as if anyone can plan for their star to die early. Jinwoo's hands shook with rage. But that's not the worst part. They're already discussing how to divide our territories after we're gone. Taemin felt old. Older than his 200 years should have made him feel. How many ships do we have ready? 43 transport vessels, Sora replied. Each can carry about 5,000 people. We can save maybe 200,000 at most. Out of 50 million, Taemin whispered. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 200,000 survivors from one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The rest would die when their world was torn apart by gravitational forces beyond imagination. Sir, Jinwoo said quietly, do you remember the human petition for Confederation membership 15 years ago? Taemin nodded. How could he forget? He had been the Valerian ambassador then, and he had spoken against the human application. The humans were too violent, too primitive, too emotional to join civilized galactic society. Their planet was a mess of wars and pollution. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. The vote had been overwhelmingly against them, with Valeria leading the opposition. I was reviewing the old records, Jinwoo continued. Earth was facing a climate crisis then. Billions were going to die from rising seas and extreme weather. They asked the Confederation for technological help to save their world. We voted no, Sora said. I remember. We said they needed to solve their own problems before they could join galactic society. They did solve it, Jinwoo said. Without our help. They developed new technologies, changed their entire civilization, saved their planet. And now look at us, we can't even save ourselves. The comparison stung because it was true. The proud Valerians, with all their advanced science and technology, were helpless against the death of their star. Meanwhile, the primitive humans had faced their own extinction and found a way to survive. Over the next few weeks, the evacuation began in earnest. Families were torn apart as lottery systems decided who would live and who would die. The ships filled with Valeria's best and brightest, their most important leaders, their greatest treasures. But for every person who boarded a transport, 200 others were left behind. Taemin chose to stay. As a former ambassador, he had secured a place on one of the ships, but he gave it to a young couple with children. Sora had to be ordered aboard by the Planetary Council. She would command the refugee fleet, leading their people to whatever uncertain future awaited them. Where will we go? Someone asked during the final council meeting. The Outer Rim territories, Sora answered. There are empty systems there, worlds we can settle. It won't be easy, but we can rebuild. If we survive the journey, another voice added grimly. Our ships weren't designed for long-term habitation. Life support systems will start failing within months. The last ships launched just as the sun began its final collapse. Those who stayed behind gathered in the great cities in temples and homes waiting for the end. Some prayed to ancient gods. Others simply held their loved ones close. Taemin stood alone on his tower, watching the evacuee ships disappear into space, carrying the future of their race away from the dying light of their world. In space, Sora commanded the refugee fleet from the bridge of the largest transport. Around her, 42 other ships struggled to maintain formation as they fled their home system. The convoy moved slowly, burdened by the weight of an entire civilization's desperate hope. Commander, her communications officer called out, long-range sensors are picking up something unusual, a large fleet approaching from the Gamma sector. Sora's blood ran cold. Pirates often hunted refugee ships, knowing they carried valuable cargo and couldn't fight back. How many ships? At least 50, ma'am, maybe more. They're too far away to get clear readings. Can we change course? Avoid them? Negative. We don't have enough fuel for a major course change. And even if we did, they're faster than us. The cruel irony was overwhelming. They had survived their son's death, escaped the destruction of their world, only to face destruction at the hands of pirates or hostile aliens. Sora thought of the 200,000 souls depending on her, refugees who had already lost everything. All ships, this is the flagship, she broadcast to the fleet. Prepare for possible hostile contact. Power up whatever defensive systems you have. The transports were civilian ships with minimal weapons. Against a fleet of 50 warships, they would last minutes at most, but they would not go quietly into death. The Valerian spirit was not so easily broken. Hours passed as the unknown fleet drew closer. Sora's crew worked frantically to identify the approaching ships, but their databases came up empty. The vessel designs were unlike anything in Confederation records. Ma'am, the sensor operator said, his voice filled with confusion. I'm getting energy signatures that match. No, that can't be right. What is it? The computer says these are human ships, but that's impossible. Humans don't have interstellar fleets. They were denied Confederation membership. They're barely space-capable. Sora stared at the sensor display in disbelief. Humans? The same species they had dismissed as primitive? The same people they had refused to help during their own crisis? Ma'am, incoming transmission. Put it through. The view screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The man wore a military uniform Sora didn't recognize, and his expression was serious but not hostile. Valerian vessels, this is Admiral Park Hyunwoo of the Human Rescue Fleet. We received your distress signals and have come to offer assistance. Please respond if you can hear this message. Sora sat in stunned silence. Behind her, the bridge crew whispered in amazement. Humans, the species they had scorned and rejected, had traveled across the galaxy to help them. Admiral, Sora finally managed to say, this is Commander Sora of the Valerian Refugee Fleet. We didn't expect. We know you didn't expect us, Commander, Admiral Park replied with a slight smile. We have medical ships, supplies, and space for your people. Will you accept our help? Sora looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She thought of the 200,000 refugees depending on her decision. She remembered how her own people had voted against Human Confederation membership, how they had refused to help Earth during its crisis. Now those same humans had crossed the galaxy to save them. Admiral, she said, her voice thick with emotion, we would be honored to accept your assistance.